Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special panel discussion looking at the future of the Australasian marketplace. Great to see boundaries and barriers now broken down across multiple states, and the rebound recovery is certainly on. We've got a great session now planned. Andrew Pears, Chief Executive Officer for Australia and New Zealand at FLG Group, joins us. Chris Caldwell, CEO of Asia Pacific for Lift Brands. Also, Nicole Noye, CEO of Collective Wellness Group, and Peter Hull, founder and CEO of Fitstop. They are chaired expertly by John Young, one of our good friends and Vice President for Asia at Matrix. A great conversation ahead. And John, over to you.
Good morning, everybody. And it's a pleasure to have today a group of industry professionals representing the Australasia marketplace. And today we're going to talk about some of the changes that have taken place as a result of COVID, but really also try to look forward to see how the impact of COVID is going to change the way that some of the industry leaders in the region are going to approach a more profitable business model. So today we're going to briefly talk a little bit about how COVID has impacted the businesses in Australia, but I think what we really want to do is look forward and look much more positively. So I'd like to first of all welcome the team. We have a very professional and seasoned group of industry professionals. So welcome to to today's session, and thank you for your time. What I would like to do is encourage us all to share take-home points that the rest of the people on the call can really take as good value. So some good take-home points. So without any further ado, I'd like to welcome Chris. I'd like to ask you a first question. Obviously, you're fairly, we're all fairly upbeat with the new changes that have taken place for the opening of the country as a result of lifting of COVID restrictions. How do you feel the government has assisted or potentially prevented your business from growing over the last 6 to 12 months?
Look, I think the introduction to say that I am a seasoned industry professional might be a slight exaggeration. As you know, I'm actually quite new to the industry. I've been in franchising for 30 years, but not so much in the fitness industry. From my perspective, coming into a new industry in the middle of COVID has been pretty challenging from a government perspective, just because of the inconsistencies across the various markets that we operate in. I think some of the states have been fantastic to work with, in that they've at least been consultative with us as industry, but some have not. And if I was to single them out and be blunt, Victoria's been very challenging to work with or even be heard as an individual market, and we continue to face into stricter challenges in that market than we do anywhere else in the country. And so from that point of view, I'd say that's been a little bit preventative. But the other states at least give us a pretty clear picture of what we know is coming and what we can expect from their behaviour, which allows us to invest with some confidence in the future in those particular markets.
Thanks, Chris, for that. Hey, Andrew, I'd like to ask you, because I know you're looking after a wide range of clubs across your portfolio crosses a bunch of countries across Asia and Australia. How might your experiences in working with the Australian government might be useful for some of the listeners to understand how they may go about also legislating with the local governments to help reduce some of the restrictions that might be in place in some of the other markets?
Yeah, thanks, John. Look, I'll just start by saying my remit is the Australia and New Zealand component of our group. So we are global, as you say. We have businesses up in Vietnam and Thailand in particular. I oversee our Australia and New Zealand businesses under our group Chief Executive Greg Oliver. So a lot of that advocacy has been done, as a group by Greg. My role's been very focused on the Australian states and New Zealand as we've been going through this. Certainly, advocacy has been a huge part of the last 18 months. And I think as an industry, it's been a defining 18 months in terms of how we organise ourselves. And I think Barry and the team at Fitness Australia have had what I would imagine to be a pretty transformative time over the last year and a half. So, look, I think it's been overall, a slightly frustrating but positive in terms of the longer term outlook for the industry and how we position ourselves to be advocates that can be heard for a very valid mission that we have, I think it's going to have proven to be a positive step change for our business, which has been and I think it's been great to see the key players in the industry come together to sort of push that agenda and to clarify with the government who we actually are as an industry and what we do. I think that was that big frustration for the industry and getting bundled together with nightclubs and other industries at the start, and the sort of more positive aspects of our mission kind of got lost in the noise. And I think as we have come at the end of this, probably the biggest point for me is the New South Wales reopening, where we were very clearly in the first wave of that reopening, which was not the case through the pulse reopenings that we went through in between. So I feel like that is good validation of the work that Barry and Fitness Australia industry leaders and Greg obviously in our firm have achieved over the 18 months.
All right, thanks very much. I guess what you're lucky in Australia because you have a pretty strong, well-established industry organisation, and I know that Ross has done a great job in Singapore putting together a similar representative group of industry professionals to try to legislate with the governments. But am I right to assume then that you've been very successful in working with other industry professionals to legislate at the local level and at the national level?
Look, probably not as successful as we would like. I think we've taken the incremental gains and welcomed those. Look, I think it's been frustrating. I don't know that we could sit here and say we've had a defining voice in the legislation. I certainly think that towards the end, we've had a lot more to do with the guidelines on reopening, and we've had a lot better success as an industry in advocating for sensible, pragmatic frameworks that more marry up with other industries relative to what is quite a low risk profile for gyms. So I think that has been positive, and it's been an improvement, albeit I think it'd be far from true to sort of say we're in there sort of drafting the legislation as it comes through.
Understood. All right, thanks very much. I'd like to move on to Nicole, because Nicole, I know obviously you're just as delighted as the rest of the panel today because all the clubs are reopening, and it's obviously you've had some challenges like we all have with the COVID. How would you sum up the challenges you've had over the last 18 months? And I think more positively, from the challenges that you've experienced, how do you what have you learned to put into place going into the future?
Yeah, thanks, John, and hi, everyone. It's been a really interesting journey, a bit similar like Chris. I started the week before we reopened the first time in this industry, so I'm fairly new to the industry, and wow, who would have thought that I've gone through the last 16 months like we have? But it's been an interesting one, and I think both points are valid. I've worked very closely with Barry at Fitness Australia, as well as Greg Oliver in FLG Group, working through what does it actually mean. And I think the challenge we had was we were deemed as high risk. And for me, coming into a new industry and being deemed as high risk, every time there was an outbreak of the virus, our brand was on the front page of the newspaper and so on. So I've spent an incredible amount of time in the last period lobbying government. And it's been an interesting thing. And I think one of the challenges we have as an industry, when you meet somebody from government or health and they actually exercise and work out in a gym, they get what we've done and the protocols that we've done to improve the safety and the cleanliness of our gyms. Really interesting how many people in health actually don't exercise. And they're the ones that were really frustrating because they just didn't understand what the industry was doing to ensure that there were no transmissions. We had 30 million visits over the last year, and we've had a handful of transmissions, and there wouldn't be many industries that would have had that situation, and yet we're deemed as high risk. So I think I genuinely believe the industry needs to get on the front foot with government going forward to make sure that they realise how important our industry is. And most probably my biggest learning is we're not just a fitness where everybody's talking about health and wellbeing industry, and therefore we're a very important part of the future of people's physical and mental health. And I think there's a voice there that's needed, and I think Barry from Fitness Australia is really advocating that at the moment. And I think we're headed in the right direction, but from what I've learned, in this last period. We've got a long way to go.
So Nicole, from what you've learned, and I appreciate that and I think it's really interesting because you come with very fresh eyes. There's a lot of us who've been in our industry for 20, 30 years, and we're just looking forward to like getting through this and going, oh, thank God, and we can go back. Well, that's surely not the case. So from your experience and coming into the industry in the last couple of years, what do you think you're going to change or implement within your operations as a consequence of what's transpired over the last 18 months?
Yeah, good question. It's interesting. I'm super excited, and I know I get excited, but I think the industry has a massive opportunity in the next 3 to 5 years to really reset the roadmap of where we're headed and not just be a physical presence. And I know people talk about the online and the hybrid working, but bricks and mortar are really important for community. Most of our gyms, we've got 525 Anytime Fitness gyms, and they're all in the suburbs, not many in the CBD. And that community aspect and bringing people back together is going to be paramount to mental health, not just physical health. So I see that as a massive opportunity. And whilst everybody's used different forms of digital over the last 2 years, it's learning what's appropriate for your business and how you support that as a whole message rather than just bricks and mortar versus digital. And I really believe there is that hybrid is here to stay, and that's super exciting for us. We learned, we have Extend Bar as well. We have 20 studios. We kept just under 50% of our members engaged the whole time through the COVID lockdowns because we had a live instructor-based online offering, and the members loved it, and it was really interesting for us. So we pivoted that way because that's all we had at the beginning. But we've also learned, we keep looking at it and saying, how can we improve it? And interesting, each time we come out of a lockdown, the member wants both. The member doesn't want one or the other. In fact, most of the time we're seeing they like coming into the studio or the club because they want to get to meet people in the community. But then that flexibility of working at home and the flexibility of hours now means that they can't always attend the bricks and mortar. So you have to have the digital to support. So I'm actually super excited.
It's a really good point, Nicole. I think we'll take another look at that a bit later on because I think that's absolutely critical. There's no one hard fast rule, and it's not one or the other. It's definitely a hybrid, as we've spoken about before. But that's really interesting. Thank you, Peter. I'd like to ask you the similar question because whereas Nicole's focusing on a franchise model with the high number of clubs across the country. You've got more of a small group training set up across your clubs. Again, looking at how COVID has impacted your operations, again, not sort of just focusing on what's happened over the last 18 months, but what have you learned that you will now want to implement going forward within Fitstop?
Yeah, it has obviously been a pretty interesting time, and we're talking about kind of experience in fitness and in franchising and trying to, I guess, grow and scale and make a bigger impact. We are in the people business. We're in the business of helping people feel better about themselves and feeling more connected. Now, I guess I'm the CEO on the panel that's been the PT first and then has kind of grown into the position I am today. So for me, it's first and foremost always been about that member experience. And for going through COVID, even though we're growing and scaling a franchise business, it really brought us back to the roots of what's important for our communities. How do we still make people feel amazing about themselves, even though it might not be seeing them in person every day? And then from a business point of view, how do we provide a level of business support without being able to see people on a day-to-day basis? And something we focused on, from a Fitstop point of view, was data collection. Now, everyone's going to have their opinion on what we should do, what we could do, and what government bodies suggest that we need to do. We focus heavily on what was the data saying all the way from our member through to our business owner. So, we could see average attendance, we could see performance still within our individual member groups across the entire network. Look at what states were doing that had different levels of restrictions and how we could maintain a higher level of community engagement. So we basically utilized a lot of the data that we were collecting to then change different messages in market and communicate to members in slightly different ways across Australia. So we're only Australia based at the moment. I'm about to head into New Zealand. But we really focused on what the member needed and wanted to feel connected and to feel better about themselves.
That's cool. Peter, and may I ask, what type of software program or CRM system are you using to manage that data collection in order you to engage more with the right messaging to your members?
Yeah, so we got lucky in some way, I guess you could say. 2 years ago, I decided to go and build our own technology out. Again, we're group-based fitness. I really wanted to make our experience quite unique to market. For me, it's always been about that member experience component and taking it back to training an athlete. So we went and built our entire system out based off the member experience we wanted to create and the data I wanted to collect from human performance to then show us what we needed to be able to achieve from a business performance point of view. So, we collect all of that data in our own system, which means we can quantify it, use our data analysts to show us areas of the business that aren't trending in the right directions to make operational decisions. So I guess an example of that is we can track the entire member journey from member in to member leaving and every single touch point along the way that we had. Their human performance data, like how much they're lifting, how fast they're running. We're moving more now into kind of wearable data and components of that as well. So yeah, from both a financial point of view, so a business analyst point of view, and also a human performance point of view, that's how we're able to make pretty accurate decisions now. So
that's amazing to be able to create your own software. I know it was a bit cheeky of me to ask it, but I'm sure people on the line might be interested to hear what type of software that you have. So can I just ask you one more question before we move on? Because I'm really interested in around the type of data, because I think certainly from a supplier and manufacturer standpoint, we offer products that provide users with almost too much data. There's so many bells and whistles that we end up actually nobody ever uses half of it. What would be the 2 or the 3 most important data that you track that enable you to reach out and engage with your members? What would be the most effective ones that somebody on the line listening today could say, if I captured those 2 or 3 data points, that would really help my business?
Yeah, so for us, I heavily focus on creating a Fitstopper for life. So for me, that's about how many touch points I have while I've got them on our journey, a part of Fitstop, to then be able to educate them and put a better position for life for longer. So it doesn't necessarily need to be a part of Fitstop for life, but we can set them up to live a healthier and happier life. Most important piece of data we collect in there is what is their lifetime value of us? And in their lifetime value, the second piece is how many times did they attend us every single week, and what were the trends throughout their lifetime? So did they start at 2 days a week? Did they move to 4 days a week? Did they come back to 3 days a week? And being able to identify for that individual, where's their sweet spot to make sure that we can keep them for longer. Because again, in fitness, we can either have a mindset of we don't care how many times someone comes into our gym or if they even use us at all. Or on the other side, especially in boutique, functional fitness is we want them to train 10 times a week because more engagement, more energy, more connection. For us, it's finding that sweet spot in the middle where we can create that hybrid approach or more personalized approach to helping someone genuinely get the result that they're looking for. So first piece of data is lifetime value of a member. Second piece of data is what did that lifetime tell us? How many times did they attend us weekly and for how long?
Perfect. That's great. Great. Thank you very much, Peter, for being so open and frank. Switching gears a little bit, Andrew, I'd like to ask you, because of, again, that you're running a slightly different operation, more big box clubs within your portfolio, but I know you have a range, quite a range of products that you have within FLG Group. There's some significant business challenges that you're looking to overcome at the moment, no doubt. There's some cash flow problems and just the normal business stuff that we're all challenged with at the moment. Where are you, though, specifically with the uptake of participation and the number of members that you have, and how are you going to? What's your sort of strategy to try to overcome to return the participation and members back to the original levels that you were having before COVID hit?
Yeah, thanks, John. That's a great and very broad question. I guess by way of context, our business probably does vary from others on the panel. So within the Australia and New Zealand division of FLG, you've got 5 brands in every state of Australia and in New Zealand. So between that, we've got 280 company-owned locations that span the big boxes of Fitness First and Good Life, the smaller convenience boxes of Zap and Jets in New Zealand, and then obviously the boutique premium offering of Barry's. So the way we operate our business will be probably slightly different to others on the panel by virtue of that. We're dealing there with a labour force of 6,500 people in our division, which is obviously has been a huge challenge. In terms of the rebuild, look, we're seeing it different in different markets. We're effectively within that portfolio, and it's a very deliberate strategy for FLG. We have, super premium products located in the middle of the Sydney CBD, spanning right through to regional offerings in every state of Australia that offer memberships from sub $10 a week. So I think we're getting a great landscape of what is going on and where the challenges are. And the challenges are extremely different if you compare the Sydney and Melbourne CBDs, where you're somewhat captive to fate in terms of people coming back. You cannot rebuild a business that's been hit by COVID without people habituating the CBD again. So we've got to, control the controllables and maximise our offer there. Whereas, plenty of our other business is now already above pre-COVID levels. So our smaller businesses, our smaller boxes have been vibrant and healthy. We've seen a gravitation of people and working habits, and be it temporary or permanently, less resident in the CBD, more resident in the suburbs, more attracted to those suburban offerings. So that part of our portfolio has absolutely thrived. The big focus for us now being, 150 of our gyms are big boxes, which would typically have, north and sometimes well north of 3,000 members per box. The trick now is addressing, the new world that we're living in and the transition back to a more normalised workforce and responding to what people actually want in their lives. You've got to really put yourself in the shoes of the member and think about, what does your routine look like now? Where are you habituating? Where is your time spent? And how do we make fitness make sense for those people? So the super premium offer in the CBD makes a lot of sense if you're in the CBD 5 days a week. That's not as prevalent as it used to be. And so we're responding with, more flexible membership types, some paper sort of visit options, which are not typically in line with how we would operate that business, but really trying to sort of, walk in the shoes of our members, and we're all seeing it in our own lifestyles as well, and just being quite strategic about offering the right thing in the right markets, and they vary drastically. The right thing in the right market is very, very different depending on price point, location, and demographic at the moment.
Are you struggling still? I'm not exactly aware of the specific changes in the COVID restrictions now, but from a lot of your clubs have large group exercise facilities. Are you still restricted by the number of people that are allowed in a studio? And depending on that sort of level of restriction, how do you envisage trying to persuade members to come back to engage in group exercise?
Yeah, there's a couple of things there. So we really see that take a bite of us in our Barry's business, for example, where we build studios that can fit, north of 50 people in them, and the arbitrary, and these are big studios, but the arbitrary government restrictions are 20 in a class. So it doesn't matter if you've got quite a small room or really quite a large room with very technical sort of mechanical HVAC in it, you're 20. So that's really constrained that business. In terms of group fitness now, what we are seeing, I think, is an ambition by the government to put this behind us. The reopening settings this time, it's most stark in Victoria, where there are no specific restrictions on group exercise, and they have really tried to take this step forward by saying, once you're vaccinated, you're participating in society as per normal. So there are still some differences. Reopening in New South Wales involved the wearing of masks, which people didn't like, by and large, in group exercise, and caps on attendance, which is still 20 people. That's a real challenge for us. Some of our group exercise rooms are multiple hundreds of square metres. And if you compare that to, a very small boutique HIIT product, both get 20. And so we find that to be an interesting rule, but one that we'll have to navigate it around for hopefully not too much longer. And then, group exercise is a huge part of our business. It's, 30% of our members are doing it, and it's 50% of our visits. So that is one large component, particularly in New South Wales, where when that lifts, our boutique business and our the vibrancy of our group exercise offering will really take a step back towards that normal pre-COVID atmosphere.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Thanks for that. Chris, if I could just ask a similar question to you, because you're coming from very much the franchise model. So I assume that a lot of the franchise, quite a few of your franchise are multiple site operators. Some of them are more single, but no doubt they've had some major challenges around cash flow and also keeping hold of their members. How are you? What are you doing from a perspective of managing your franchisees, and what advice would you give other people in a similar situation to try to overcome some of the challenges that your franchisees are experiencing at the moment?
Yeah, thanks, John. I'll answer that in a second. There's just a point I wanted to add to the earlier conversation around industry, and I know Nicole's heavily involved in this as well. So whilst we're a part of the fitness industry, and I agree with Andrew's comments earlier about Barry and Fitness Australia doing a fantastic job over the last 18 months. We're us and Nicole and Anytime and Collective Wellness Group are also similar. We're also part of the franchise industry, and the Franchise Council of Australia also stepped up as an industry representative body from a lobbying perspective for us. And I think that's probably important, that we're not just limited to being part of the fitness industry. We're also part of the franchise industry. We're also considered part of, in some cases, part of the Australian Retail Association. So there are a number of other industry bodies that can also support our brands and our businesses to lobby government and to get our case put forward. In terms of your comment about supporting franchisees, 95% of our business is franchised. We do own a collection of company-owned locations as well, and I agree with Andrew. The movement of members throughout our business over the last 18 months has been interesting and created some challenges naturally as our CBD locations have kind of dropped their numbers, and probably the inner ring of metropolitan cities are picking up quite well within a sort of a 5 to 10 kilometre radius from the CBD. So those businesses have performed quite well. Unfortunately, they're not the same franchisees, so one franchisee doesn't just pick up their members and move them to another club they own 5 or 10 kilometres away. That would be perfect. We have been able to retain most of the members within our brand because we have reciprocity across all of our clubs. So that certainly helps in terms of at least retaining the members within our brands. But in terms of supporting franchisees, I mean, I'll be pretty transparent. We have been super supportive of all our franchisees, particularly in Victoria and New South Wales, where they've been impacted the most. And most of our Victorian franchisees haven't paid a cent in royalties for 18 months. So we just haven't taken the step of charging them their royalty fee for that period of time, not only when they're closed, but also in the couple of months after they reopen, to enable them to get back into a strong cash flow position for their business. And we've supported them financially through that. There are a number of fixed costs and those sorts of things that we've basically provided interest-free loans through to our franchisees, and that naturally runs into the millions and millions of dollars over the length of time that we've been and the number of franchisees that we've got. So, for those guys, naturally there'll be some casualties along the way, as there would be in any time, with or without COVID. Any business can fall by the wayside from time to time as consumer preferences change or regions change. So there's those impacts, but not too many. And I think we'll come out of the other side of this in a pretty strong position with our network, and they appreciate that support. We've got 360 clubs that are open right now across Australia and New Zealand, and a couple of smaller Asian countries that we've reopened in. There's a couple of our Asian markets that we haven't reopened in yet, being the Philippines and Indonesia, but including Hong Kong and Japan and Taiwan. They're all up and trading, obviously, as you know, given where you are right now. So 360 clubs spread across multiple franchisees, but we do have a lot of multiple site operators.
Yeah. So you've got 360 franchises. What would be how do you think what is your advice, and what do you think has been the most successful strategies that the franchisees have taken in order to grow their business and get them back to some sense of normality?
Look, okay, I'll use New South Wales as an example. I mean, New South Wales has been open for 3.5 weeks off the top of my head. The time flies pretty quickly. Once, there was obviously leading up was quite challenging. And then once we're open, it was floodgates and they're off and racing. Our network in New South Wales, right as of now, after 3.5 weeks, is back to it's back to the numbers it was at when they went into lockdown in June. So on average, every club in New South Wales is back to that number that they were in June or above. So that's a fantastic response from the New South Wales community. Victoria's only been open for, I'll say 1.5 days because they opened on a Friday night. So, that wasn't great timing for our industry, but we'll take it. And they're back open and trading, and now they're in spring racing carnival, so they're all drunk anyway. But it's been a couple of days, and so far, Victoria looks like it's on the same trajectory that New South Wales was. So they really do bounce back very quickly, which is a really good, for me, that's a really strong sign of resilience for not just our brands, but I'm sure it's probably similar across the other panelists' brands in those markets as well. That's something that we're super proud of and speaks to the point of our community. People couldn't wait to get back out of their house and get back into their communities, whether it's their fitness community, their work community, their school community, whatever it might be. People love being part of a community.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Chris. Thanks for being so open. Can I ask a similar question to you, Nicole? Because I know one of your titles includes Chief Experience Officer, which I think is very cool, especially in the industry that we're in and you're in now. The experience that you want your members to experience when they come to any time, has it changed since as a result of COVID? Do you see it changing and because of this sort of this hybrid digital influence or just the way the business is going to run in the future?
Yeah, I think experience is a really interesting thing because we're 24/7, which is low staffing model, right? And back on what Chris was talking about, I think reopening has actually put more people, our franchises put more people on the floor. And because of that, they're gaining better, improved experience as soon as we open the doors. And I know I look back and we actually did some data back when there were COVID marshals, and interesting how much improved our NPS because there were actually people there to greet and talk to the members. Experience is a lot more than just the bricks and mortar now. It's actually, and I think a few of the guys have mentioned, it's being where you need to be at the time that the member wants to use you, not at when you choose for them to want to use you. And therefore the experience is when they need it, when the member needs it, not when we think they need it. And I think listening to Pete and the data and so on, all of that is crucial going forward. Having a true CRM journey, I believe, where we track through the prospect all the way through to the member experience. And Pete talked about visitation being crucial and what is the right visitation, and not necessarily benchmarking the visitation, but the right visitation for that member. And then when do you interact with them? And everybody's different, and using that data to personalise that experience is going to be really important. So I think the days of opening up a gym and just using a fob to get in and out are gone. And I think there's actually a really good opportunity to engage that member. And one of the things we're working on at any time, especially at the moment, is, and I know we talk about data and how you improve, but I mentioned it earlier, is how do you improve that you feel better about yourself? And I think there is a swing at the moment. It's not just about, and I shouldn't say this, but muscles or, it's muscles as well, but it's more about how you feel about yourself. So when you do go out on a Saturday night and you dress up, you actually feel good about yourself. And that's how you work out for yourself, but also how does that help your mental focus and self-confidence when you're going out. So all of that put in, I think when you go experience, I go, that person that goes out on a Saturday night, if they feel good about themselves and they have a great night, then whatever we're doing as part of that process is actually going to help them engage with our brand more. So it's a bit of an unusual way to look at it, and it's not just BMI, right? It's a bit more to it than that. And when you go into a gym, when you go into a gym at the moment, it's really interesting because so many people, and I'm sure the others have seen it, everybody's talking to each other. Oh, I haven't seen you for months. I haven't seen you around for a while, or whatever it may be. And that social interaction, I think, is also part of experience. And it's not just social interaction from our staff, it's also social interaction by each of the members to each other and creating an atmosphere where they do actually want to engage in each other. So I think there's a lots in there. Obviously, we haven't got hours to spend, but that's what we've got to unpack. And I think if you nail that, you nail the member experience, which will improve your visitation, of course.
No, I absolutely. I think you're of course, you're spot on when it comes to looking at now fitness or people's experience more from a broader perspective. As you say, it's not just BMI or body fat or whatever the traditional parameters we used to measure health by. It's more of a well-being approach. Do you have any? Are you able to measure people's level of, let's call it, well-being for now? Because if you can't measure it, then you don't know what's the impact. So, but I maybe I'm not being glib here, but do you see a way that you can measure well-being to then benchmark it and say, okay, well, this is how well we're doing, and this is where we want to go?
So we're not there yet. And if I had that crystal ball and was able to know that right now, I'd be sitting here and nobody else would be on the line. So, but I think it starts with measuring your goals. And certainly what we're doing at the moment is revisiting when we actually go through the prospect experience, when we actually list the goals, how do we educate our team that the goal isn't necessarily BMI? The goal can be BMI, but also what else is it, and engaging that. So we're on a process and how we use digital to capture what those goals are and how do we hit those goals. So yeah, nowhere near it yet, but have a great vision, and we're certainly working on the tools behind the scenes at the moment to be able to take people through that journey.
Super. Thanks, Nicole. Thank you. Switching gears a little bit now to Peter. You were talking a little bit earlier about some of the KPIs that you're using and the software systems that you have. I'm interested to get your opinion about how digital fitness and wellness is changing or has changed, and what is your outlook for the next 2 to 3 years in how the digital fitness model is going to impact your business?
Yeah, for sure. And I might just touch on some of those things that Nicole just mentioned and give a bit of insight
Please.
into how we're looking to measure. We're not there yet as well. But again, the data collection piece for me, we actually focus massively on, from our member experience point of view, that confidence does look very different on everyone. And what we've been able to slightly quantify and what we're working on at the moment is, for us, that's about building routine and creating habit for our members. So we know a member comes to us through intrinsic motivators. So it's like, I need to lose 5 kilos. I want to put on some muscle. It is that kind of aesthetic approach, or I know I just need to do something. But what keeps them is that routine. And how we can measure that routine is, what is the habits that they're building out? How does it become natural to them? And then from that, how do we identify when they're going to potentially drop off because it's now no longer a habit and they fell out of cycle and they're going to go back to the goal. The goal is what gets them in, the habit's what keeps them. So where we've been able to slot more into the digital side of all of this is, how do we keep routine for our members? Now, we have been in an environment and we're not going to be in that environment anymore. But when we do go into these smaller lockdowns, or we've got different states that are in lockdown and different states that are open, we want to create the same routine and same member experience for every single one of our members to keep them. Being able to tag in that digital fitness element from a business point of view, and because of our technology, we keep our members on a discounted rate. So as soon as we go into a lockdown, we transfer them over onto our digital platform only. So it discounts the membership by 50%. They don't need to do anything. It unlocks them so that they can pause at any stage. We give the member experience, the member what they need in the palm of their hand to make a decision to stay or leave at all times. The most important thing is we then track to make sure we've got touch points with them. So whether it be bricks and mortar business or digital at home, whatever that is, Fitstop's still part of their life. Now, on top of that, we do an on-demand, so our member can access us anywhere, anytime, and then that's just now an ongoing for us. So as we grow, evolve, and invest more and more into, I guess, the digital and bricks and mortar space, it's just about enhancing both experiences to keep a better, more solid routine for our member.
Great, thanks very much. That's great. I really like your approach, and it's interesting because that your approach versus the managing the franchise model is obviously extremely different, and yet the outcome is similar. So it's interesting how you come to the same you get to the same point of success, but in a very, very different way. Andrew, I'd like to ask you a similar question around the impact of digital fitness and the popularity that digital fitness is taking. How do you see that impacting the operation of FLG? How do you see, are you introducing and integrating the digital fitness experience for your members across your portfolio?
Yeah, thanks, John. I find the whole phrase digital fitness to be quite funny. Like in some ways, you know, every single aspect of our lives is digitizing. So I don't think it should be any surprise at all in the fitness industry that things are incrementally becoming more and more digitized. We're having the ability to collect data. We're having the means with which to use it to make decisions. That is true of how we eat, how we pay for things, how we get around. I think it's every aspect of the human society is digitizing. So it's definitely happening. I think for me, there is a differentiation that is important around, you know, digital in terms of what is content and what is technology. So there's sort of, they do get a bit confused, I think. When we're talking about content, there have been incremental improvements in technology which have allowed at-home consumption of fitness content to improve since the 1980s. You know, aerobics, odd style, Jane Fonda. There are big differences and big similarities between that and Peloton at the moment. You know, we've got two-way interaction. We've got sleeker hardware. We're not using VHS anymore, but intuitively it's asking you to do the same thing, which is to work out an environment which isn't optimal, to bring to the table all your own motivation and accountability, and to effectively live as an island, which human beings fundamentally haven't evolved to be able to do, and for that to fill your bucket in terms of your fitness journey and also your community basket. You know, like that sort of attempting to be indoctrinated in this content consumption sort of framework at the moment. But does that ever truly replicate the in-person experience? Has Facebook actually done away with socializing? You know, there's a lot of analogies here that we can go into. So the whole content thing, I think, you know, it's interesting and it's great to talk about on panels. Really, it's the playing out of an evolution that's happened since humans started interfacing with technology and since, you know, content became consumable at home. So I think that will continue along the track that it's on. I think when we think about our bricks and mortar businesses, it's more just that programming is no longer confined to the four walls, which is, I think, what people are talking about with this hybridization. It's not a competitive advantage. It's just a basic fundamental expectation now that as a member of a gym, I can access really high quality programming in the four walls. We believe in that. Different people have different models, and within our portfolio, we have different models. Generally, you should have access to high quality programming that gives you results in an equipment-rich environment in the gym. And there is now a basic expectation that there will be something that complements that and speaks to it in an integrated way that is also accessible outside of the four walls. So I don't think there's a fundamental paradigm shift here. I think it's just that programming has found its way free of the four walls, probably, and COVID's probably accelerated that transition. I don't think it's revolutionary. I think it's evolutionary, and that's the way that content's going. Content and programming is a bucket. The other aspect of the whole thing is technology. You know, more generally, you know, there is a heap of technology that underpins our businesses, and to me, the role of technology in our world is to reduce friction. You know, if you look at all the startups that have made sense, most of them are sort of finding points of friction in our lives. You know, the Ubers and these kind of companies finding points of friction and frustration and solving them in a way that then becomes invisible and taken as a given by the people that use them. So that's a really interesting part of the member journey for us at FLG as well. So, you know, where are the points of frustration? How does self-service look? You know, basic account management on a gym membership, which has been, you know, if we're honest, a source of frustration for many of our members over a long time period. You know, how do we find these pockets of frustration and use, you know, technology which is not actually programming? But if we're talking about digital, there is this whole other aspect of digital, which is accepting the fact that the bricks and mortar model is a valid one and will remain so for the next 2,500 years, as it has for the last 2,500 years. And it's finding friction within that member journey and solving it, getting into the club with your phone, adjusting your own account settings without having to wait on a phone call. These kind of things are impactful, and they are a source of competitive advantage by reducing the frustration and friction in the journey. So we're focused on it in two different ways, I guess.
No, that's really good feedback. Thank you for that. I think that I often hear that phrase frictionless convenience, and how technology is designed to, technology has to be used to reduce that friction that otherwise members have in their journey that they might experience as they go along in the club. So yeah, it really makes sense. Nicole, can I ask you a question? And I'm gonna give you there are two parameters I would like you not to mention. One is digital and the other is COVID, because as Andrew just said, gosh, we talk so much about COVID and digital. I'm a bit sick and tired of listening to it. So, apart from COVID and digital, what do you think are the key trends that are impacting the growth of our industry over the next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, thank you. And I'm glad I'm not mentioning those words, because I'm over them too. Look, it's exciting. I think we're, especially in Australia, which is what we're all focused on, we have very low unemployment. We have people who actually realised, out of everything that we've been through in the last 18 months, that they want to get healthy and look after themselves. And I think we've got a pent-up amount of money that's sitting in people's bank accounts at the moment because they haven't been able to do what they've needed to do. So I look at it, one of my founders says it's a perfect storm. I think the perfect storm actually was a disaster, right? I'm actually looking at it the other way. I believe if we can provide incredible member experience, whichever way we need to do it, everybody on the panel's talked about it today, and really engage that prospect from the beginning through to the existing members and keeping them engaged in our business. The roadmap's amazing. And I sit with the team and I go, our awareness levels in the last year and a half have actually increased, which I know sounds odd, but maybe because we have been on the front page for the wrong reasons. But our awareness is higher than we've ever had. As New South Wales and Victoria have opened in the last couple of weeks, our NPS has gone up because we are engaging. And so when you've got awareness up, engagement levels the best we've ever had, on top of that, a very good economy for the next few years. If we deliver on all of the aspects that we've got on our roadmap, we'll be able to really enhance the member experience and continue to grow our businesses. And I think that side, combined with not just being bricks and mortar, offering nutrition, offering mindfulness, how do we improve our wellness of our members? So all of those factors combined, and I know Pete talked about before, and yes, thank you, Pete, getting people back into a routine and keeping them in that routine to make them feel better about themselves will actually help the journey as well. We've developed a small club format recently. We're super excited about to be able to go into towns that our current clubs can't go into because the population doesn't warrant the investment. We've also just acquired the perpetual rights for Extend Bar, which is our studio programming. We're super excited about that. And I think we've got a team at the moment. And when you say, well, what does it actually look like? Having good people at the moment who have the vision of where we need to take the business and being passionate about it will help with that journey as well. So I think, to your point, we've almost got to shake the industry up a bit and not just call us fitness, but health and wellbeing, and how do we improve that roadmap going forward, and making sure that we have the team, not just at the support office, but actually at the club level to engage. And franchisees, it's really important that they do well and that we take them on that journey as well and encourage them into where we're headed, rather than, I think where we've been is where we've been, and now we've got to stay focused on where we're headed. And, we've all had a few ups and downs in the last 18 months, and it's got to stay true to what we believe is the opportunities in the marketplace over the next couple of years. So if you can't tell, I actually think this industry's got a really important place to play in any part of the world at the moment, not just in Australia, to improve people's focus on where they're headed for the future. So if we can play a part of that, that's pretty exciting.
I really appreciate that, Nicole. And that's a really positive approach. It's lovely to hear, because I think, as you say, to engage with the members, it's, and some of us have been in the industry for so long. I remember the first book I ever read when I was in my 20s, just getting into managing. It was a book about caring, and it was the book, I think, was entitled To Care, and I read it back to front, and I've still got it. But it's all about, if we can imbue our staff to care about the members. I know it sounds potentially old-fashioned, but caring and then taking it to the next step of, okay, let's not care just about the basic parameters of why you might come to the club in the first place, but more about people's well-being and, you know, moving forward and engaging in other activities that improve their wellness and their well-being and health. You know, that's I guess that's sort of where you see yourself going. It's very interesting to see.
Yeah, and I'm sure everybody that's been around for a while goes, "Oh, we've already been working on that," and my team. That's what fitness has been about, but it's actually a different mindset now of what we actually can provide the people that join our gyms.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. Peter, if we could, I'd like to ask you that same question around sort of your opinion of digital and wellness, and where do you see what changes do you see impacting sort of trends going into the future? You know, not in the past. Again, how do you see your operations changing based on where the trends are going?
Yeah, definitely. And I'll use a little bit of both Andrew and Nicole's points here. I think for me, it's definitely about that member experience component. And again, if we use the likes of Uber Eats, all of these amazing digital platforms that have made convenience better, easier, lowered barriers of entry, and have given the consumer the rights and the choice to make decision in the way that they want to. That's absolutely where our space needs to head, and I think is heading. And I think that COVID, again, I've used both digital and COVID in this conversation, and you asked me not to, but I think what it has taught us is we do need to shake things up. You know, fitness for me, starting as a personal trainer and then kind of coming through, a lot of the reasons we pushed into, you know, the technology space, the member experience space, the community space, was I saw the industry of all the things it could and should be, but I physically experienced all the complete opposite. And it was the likes of how you signed up as a member, how you were treated as a number, what happened when your membership base, you know, bounced and you were locked out, and all of these kind of things. So, you know, for me, my big focus and absolutely where I'd love to see the industry head is all about consumer experience, about caring about every single member. It's not about the return on investment for that member. It's about, you know, what we can genuinely give them that they can give to others. And if we can do that through technology, through experience, through creating a more inclusive environment as a whole, then, you know, not only are we going to be financially, you know, rewarded for that as we all grow global businesses, but we actually get to make a positive impact. And yes, COVID, I'll say it again, it's a health pandemic. We can actually, you know, help the world, help people get healthier and happier, and create amazing businesses along the way.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Peter. Well, I think that pretty well wraps up today's session. I certainly appreciate everyone being very frank and candid. Thank you, Andrew, Chris, Nicole, and Peter, all for your feedback. And I hope that there's some good take-home points for the listeners on today's call. As I said, I think there's some critical learning points. I certainly got a really good idea of where you know the businesses, the opportunities are. I think especially around really focusing on re-engaging with our members and sort of going back to the fundamentals, but also at the same time embracing how digital and how our members want to engage with content, not just within the club. And we all know that's coming. It's just how we might approach that into the future. But I think it's all for today. So again, thank you very much for your time and your input. And I really appreciate you sharing your ideas today. So thank you very much.